Here we go. Hey, everybody. So happy to be back with you on this LinkedIn Live series. And today I am bringing to you my old friend, Dan Goodman, who I know many of you know. And listen, there was some really staggering statistics that just came out today. I think it was layoffs rose 245% in February. And that meant 172,000 people were let go last month from their jobs. And Dan is going to tell you all about the data that he is seeing. But let me first introduce myself. I want to introduce Dan after that, and then we are just going to get going. So I'm Lindsay Dowd. I'm the Chief Revenue Officer of Intry. We focus on helping job seekers in a number of different ways, and we will get into a little bit of that. But Dan, please tell everyone who you are and what you do, because what you do is very important and can help a lot of people.
Thank you, Lindsay. It's great to be here and great to see you again.
You too.
I am a very passionate advocate for employees to help them stand up to wrongdoing by their employer and not carry years or decades of regret for not doing something about it. It happens all the time, every day. It doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, how well you perform, what role you're in, what industry you're in. It's across the board. People walk away in silence and they carry this for years, and it's traumatic. And I am giving them a voice. I am a resource for them to stand up to it, to call it out. They have nowhere else to turn other than to going to an attorney. And 9 out of 10 people would never even consider it, never mind following through with it. As a result, employers just continue to do bad behavior after bad behavior, feel empowered to do it. And it's time that we put an end to it.
I am here for that. I think one of my favorite quotes that I love to say is there's no such thing as job security. There's only career security, and you have to create that for yourself. So as we dive into this, we're going to talk about the emotional, the mental, the toll that losing your job is going to have on you. Or if you are going through it right now, we feel your pain. I have been there. Dan has been there. So we know what this is like. So first, let me just say, our hearts are with you, dudes. This is not easy stuff. And anybody says that this isn't personal, I'm sorry, it is. It's your blood, sweat, and tears. It's everything that you put into your 60% of your existence is going to your work. So when someone says it's not personal, it's really inconsiderate, because it really, really is. And most people work pretty hard, and you're probably providing for yourself and your partner or your family, and there's pressure involved. So we get that. So let's just first talk about the emotional toll. And you have thousands of clients, Dan, but I'll just share a moment of just my own experience and how it felt for me to lose my job. I was an executive at IBM after 23 years, and I was sought out by another company, went to this other company, was there for 6 months, and any reasonable executive knows you can't even find the bathroom in 6 months. There's a lot that you have to learn. And they fired me, and I was gutted, and I didn't see it coming. And I thought no one would ever work with me again. I thought, I had a scarlet letter. And for a month, I couldn't talk about it. It was really, really awful, really, really hard to get up the courage to say that this happened to me. And I didn't have Dan then. So I did go the route of the attorney, but the shame and the stigma and the fear was very, very real. So I feel you. But hey, there's good news, because after that, I did all kinds of good stuff. I went and wrote a couple books. I started a podcast, which Dan was on, and got some awards. I've been coaching. I am now the CRO of Intry. So there is life after a layoff. And Dan, will you just share some of your clients' experience?
Of course.
I think this is real.
One thing that you mentioned earlier is that, it is personal. It absolutely is.
Yeah.
But I tell people to not take it personally, meaning that it's not about them. Don't believe the lies and gaslighting and deceit that they're telling you to justify the termination, so that you'll walk away with your tail between your legs and carry that with you. That oftentimes they'll make these things up, and it's a reflection on the company and its leadership, not on you. And people have their self-confidence sapped. They don't know where to go. I've seen people extremely depressed. I've had a half a dozen clients that either attempted or thought of suicide as a result of it. Absolutely.
100%.
And it's real. And a lot of people just brush it off. Go just leave and go get the next job or whatever. But when you are stuck in it and you've been there for so long and you've committed yourself and made sacrifices and you have this blind trust and it's been violated, it impacts that person on a real level, and it carries forward, and not just with the job, but in their entire life. I mean, the stories that I've heard are countless. I mean, I've spoken to, I probably had 2,700 paid clients and what's 25 months right now doing this, if you can believe it. When I started this, it was all about, helping people get more money for severance or get the commissions that were owed to them. And I came to quickly realize that was in many instances secondary. The trauma that people have experienced, the ability to stand up to it, to call it out, to have their story heard is so empowering. Some folks that they come to me, even on their first call, just to know that there's someone out there that they can turn to and be heard. I mean, I've had people tell me that, their coworkers, their peers, their subordinates, their family, their friends, none of them, they think they're crazy because they're telling about what's going on, but yet they're perceived in such a strong way from the outside in. And they just don't understand the mobbing that can take place, the gaslighting.
Well, and let's just talk about that for a second, because I very much live a life where things happen for you, and people will say, "Oh, it's a blessing." Well, it doesn't feel like a blessing in the moment, and the pressure is real. And if you don't have money coming in, you have to find a way to live. So that is real. And you touched on something that I definitely wanted to hit on, and that is the mental toll that comes with being a job seeker. And suicide rates go way, way up. That is a fact. It is really, really frightening. And I want you, the first thing you ought to be doing, and Dan, we're going to talk tactical in a little bit, but the first thing you have to realize is nobody got an MBA in job seeking. You shouldn't go it alone. There are experts of all kinds. There are experts who can help you with resumes. There are experts who can help you with your LinkedIn. There are experts that will help you with mental health, but you need tools to help with coping. So we do that through Intry. We offer these things in our outplacement alternative, and we work with some of the best career coaches to help you get those tools and find your footing. But if you haven't been in the job market for a while, there's a lot you need to know. So I will help you with that, but let's go into some of the tactical stuff. And I want to talk first about, if you are an employee, you are gainfully employed, maybe you just won President's Club and you think you got it made in the shade. What do you need to be thinking about, Dan?
I guess I would say is don't be too comfortable. And I probably wouldn't have said this a couple of years ago because I wouldn't have believed it. Like most folks who aren't in sales or who haven't been top performers and had these things happen to them, don't believe it ever happens. Just because you got a bonus or a raise or an equity grant for performance or came back from President's Club, believe it or not, doesn't mean that your job is secure. A lot of times they are gunning for the top performers. If you blew out your number in Q1 and you're in the top end of the accelerator for the rest of the year, and now the company has to do a retroactive comp plan change or change the plan and harm the culture for the rest of the organization, they would just assume get rid of you, take the commissions they owe you to the bottom line, and move on. And I know it sounds crazy, but I can't even begin to tell you the number of times it happens. So the first thing I would say is just because you feel like you're in good standing doesn't mean you won't be blindsided and have it happen to you. So be prepared. And when I say be prepared, assume that you're going to be terminated tomorrow and locked out of your systems and walked out the door. And you're going to say, oh, I wish I knew because I would have done this and this and that. So go do that now and set a calendar once a week, once every 2 weeks to go and remind yourself to go and update those things.
Yeah. So let's just give the audience. And by the way, guys, if you see me looking down, I'm looking at your questions. So if you have questions, put them in because we are happy to answer them. So just some of the things that I think you ought to be thinking about. And Dan, you chime in with some of yours. But number one, your LinkedIn profile. That is your landing page. When you are Googled, that's the first thing that people see. So give that some love. And if you don't know how to do it, reach out to me. I would be glad to help. But you have to give your banner some attention, give your headline some attention. Your company does not own your LinkedIn profile. And you can easily tell if your boss says, I see you're updating your LinkedIn profile. Are you looking for a job? You can say, actually, I just learned how important it was for me to build my personal brand. So I'm starting to do that now. not going anywhere, just really working on that. And that's probably something you should be doing too. And if you need someone to come and help with that, we can hire Lindsay. She'd be happy to come in and help. But that's one thing. The other thing that I love to do, and I did this often, I created what was called a pats on the back folder. And it was with my personal email. And every time I got some recognition, every time I got some wonderful note from someone about something good that I did, it went right there. And that way, if you are locked out of your systems, you have all of those reminders, you have all of those accolades. And when you need recommendations or contacts to nurture down the road, you can look back on those, A, with some fondness, and B, with some people that thought really highly of you. Dan, what do you have to add to that?
So some of the things that I suggest people to gather, I tell them to get the basics first. So get your employment agreement, your restrictive clauses, your compensation plan. If you're in sales, build out your pipeline to replicate that. If you get your performance reviews, get all the relevant stuff. So that's the basics. And if the company has been sort of trying to manage you out of the business to make you want to leave on your own, they've likely taken tactics, some subtle, some not so subtle, for months leading up to it. So you want to document all that. It's not just your words saying, oh, well, this happened and this happened. You want to build out the case. I have this thing called my buckets of wrongdoing. When people are basically being attacked, when they're being blindsided, when they're being discriminated, when they're being retaliated against, when they're being targeted, when they're being humiliated, or whatever it is. And they do these tactics to make you not want to be there anymore, so that you don't like your job anymore, and you'll just leave on your own to save them from the termination, the severance, unemployment, justifying the termination, the whole thing, or having it on the manager's record. So when these things are happening, you want to document them as they're going along, and start building out the case. I always tell folks, don't go to human resources if your goal is to stay on and expect them to help resolve the matter on your behalf. That's right. I say when you do that, you're basically being played by human resources. I say go to human resources and play them, meaning use them to document the wrongdoing when you know that you're likely on your way out anyway, whether you're going to leave on your own or the writing is on the wall by the company. That way, they're not hearing about these concerns for the first time after you've been terminated. Now you're trying to negotiate your severance.
I love that you said that. And documentation is so important, especially if you have a boss who's being difficult, who's being unreasonable, if you have someone in the business who's doing untoward things to you, because those things happen. We've all had bad leaders. So we know that this is true. But also you want to document your quantifiables. The biggest thing I run into with job seekers is they can't remember some of those numbers, some of their achievements. So, everybody had a resume when you got the last job that you had. And if you were at your company for a long time, you probably haven't looked at that resume in a while. Go back, freshen it up while you can, while it's safe, and then start to add those quantifiables to it, because you will forget. And the reality is, when you lose your job, your brain gets all foggy and you get wrapped around the axle on the wrong things, and the shame and the woe and the sadness. You can't think clearly. So when you are able to think clearly is the best time to start to grab all of those little things. And if it's a job that, most people stay in jobs like 2 to 3 years. So if you're in a company and you've had multiple jobs, go back and ask those old bosses, say, hey, what did we do on those numbers? I would love to remember. I was trying to refresh my memory. I was talking to someone about it the other day. It's an easy way to just get some detail and fill up your resume.
So I just want to add to that point that you made regarding sort of the shock of the termination and being blindsided, and what your mental state is at that point, and how you're not really in any position to be signing any legal agreements or to really understand what's going on. I always say, take a couple of days. I've had somebody, get fired by a CEO and the response was an F you. And you can imagine what the severance negotiations look like from that point on. It was not very good. No. Be professional, ask why you're being terminated. But ultimately, you got to question everything, and when you've been blindsided by the termination, get help. You've never been through it before. The folks that you're dealing with on the other side in human resources, they've done this literally hundreds, if not thousands of times. They've gone to school for it. They've been trained for it. There's legal documents that have been prepared by $800 an hour lawyers for the sole benefit of the employer against you. So realize that they're not your friend. Don't blindly trust what they're saying. That they have a goal, and that's to minimize separation costs at all costs so that you move on.
That's
and
right.
and stand up to it, and don't be bullied, and know what your rights are, and call it out. And
What?
but keep a level head. That this is where they get you, because you've never been through it. You're out of work. You don't know when the next paycheck is coming. You don't know why you've been terminated. You've been
Mhm.
told that you're doing great. You've been rewarded. Your job is safe. You've got a family. You got a big mortgage. These things often happen around life cycle events.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like when you show vulnerability, it seems like that's when you're being targeted the most, and
Yeah.
across the chasm. So those are my thoughts with that.
I will also say too, many companies have outplacement services, and that's one of the things that we do at Intry. Is if people are leaving the business, they either are paying for unemployment insurance for those people for a period of time, or they've engaged in companies like Intry or LHH or some other competitors of ours, and those people are there to help you with your resumes or help you with interviewing or whatever. Those services are usually not from the company. Now, when I left, I made the mistake of saying, I want nothing to do with this company. So I didn't want anything they had to offer me, which was kind of a mistake on my part. These are third parties, and they are usually pretty good at what they do. For us, we put a lot of heart in what we do. So we love working with companies that recognize you're at this crossroads as a leader. You have to make some tough decisions, but you're going to do it with heart, and you're going to take care of the people who took care of you. I had to lay people off when I was at IBM, and it was a rotten, rotten thing. I hated it. I swore I would never get good at it. And the leaders that lead with heart, really, you can tell they don't like doing it. Steve Cadigan, who's the first CHRO from LinkedIn, he and I talked about this a lot on our live. And, both of us had the experience where people were apologizing to us that we were laying off. Like, I'm so sorry you have to do this. We were stunned by that response. Like, that's not normal.
Right.
It was just a lousy situation, but to be able to give your people what they need to move on to the next thing is really important. And I hope companies are really starting to think about that some more, especially in this tough time.
And to be able to let them walk away, and feel good about
That's
themselves,
right.
and look back on their time in a positive light. I
That's
mean,
right.
there's employees who've worked in places 10, 15, 32 years
Yep.
who are blindsided with a termination, made up stories about why it's happening and that are clearly false.
Yep.
And it's just the wrong way to do it. I mean, if you're going to let people go, it's just the natural flow of business.
Humane. It's
I mean,
humane.
there's nothing wrong with it, but do it with honesty and transparency and respect, and don't blindside them,
Yeah.
and support them, and give them
Yeah.
a fair and decent package. The
And
problem
listen,
is that that it is, for some reason, the norm to let people go. I think attorneys ruined it. I really do. I think that attorneys have advised employers to plan for the 0.1% outlier scenario, and then treat everyone else like a criminal as if they were going to do that scenario.
yeah.
And it's sad that that's how it's done, and it's the
No,
norm.
it's very, I mean, for me, it was follow the script and don't deviate from the script, and you cannot say you're sorry. And everyone knew it was a script because I don't talk like that.
Yeah.
And I even would say, I'm going to read from the script. So they knew it wasn't me. But regardless, back to the job seekers. Okay, so let's play out some scenarios. So you have thousands of clients who reach out to you. Let's go with the big topic, which is layoff. So you've been laid off, and there's a difference between being fired and being laid off. Should we cover what that is first? I
Sure.
mean, a layoff is when your position has been eliminated. Being fired means that someone is going to take a position that you held. Am I right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Well. I mean, I guess being fired could be for a number of reasons. It could be performance based. It could just be
Sure.
not be a fit. It could be a downturn.
But they're probably
Elimination.
not eliminating that position. Typically, it means that you aren't a fit for that role anymore, and you should be on your way.
Yeah, I mean, layoffs are
Um,
more widespread than sort of individually picking off employees, although they
right,
try to dress it up as as the same thing.
right. Okay, so you've been laid off. Um, you didn't see it coming. What do you do first?
I mean, the first thing from my perspective, do you deserve to be laid off? I mean, obviously there's a two-prong approach. You need to move forward and put together a plan to go replace that income, and figure out what you're going to do next. So you want to do all the traditional things, networking, and who finds a job the old-fashioned way anymore, right? Back in the 80s and 90s, we'd be looking at the help wanted page. Literally.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to find the job that you really, really want simply by being one of 1,000 resumes in a pile.
No, you're not going to find it on a job board. And if you're listening to this, all 50 some of you who are on right now, please don't press easy apply. That is going to tank your resume. It's going to make it go places you don't want it to go. It will not serve you. You will likely get a job through your network. So keep going.
I continue with that, but from an employee advocacy perspective, this is one of the things I want to tell people about layoffs. So, employers have a right to downsize, and there's a right way and a wrong way of going about that. But there's also scenarios where people are what I call thrown into the riff pile that never should have and wouldn't have been, other than underhanded things going on for months leading up to it to try to manage you out of the business so you'll leave. And when you haven't left and you're in a protected class, they throw you into the riff pile and give you a basic standard severance package. And I've worked with dozens and dozens and dozens of people in that scenario that have negotiated significantly higher severance packages when they're being terminated as part of a riff.
So let's talk about severance packages, because I think there is a psyche of, I'm giving you this very generous severance package and you should take it. And fear comes into play. And most of the time, because you're not an attorney or you don't have one in your immediate family or best friend, you think if you don't take it, all is lost. So I love your approach of take a couple days, say, I need to digest this, I need to process, but what should they be thinking about? How should they approach that severance package? And how do they know if it's fair?
So the first thing is, if you're over 40 years old, you are entitled to 21 days if you're let go by yourself to review the severance and 7 days to revoke it. And if you're let go with even one other person, it's considered a layoff, and you're entitled to 45 days to review it and 7 days to revoke it. It's federal law. It's not state law. It's not based on what the employer wants to do. It's open and shut. It's not open for debate. You would be shocked at the number of people over 40 that are being given 21 days when they're part of a layoff.
That's right.
And when you're under 40, anything goes. Wait,
let's just say that again. So you're over 40. How many days do you have?
You have 21 days if you're terminated by yourself. 7 days to revoke it.
Now, terminated by yourself means you quit, or means that No.
If you quit, then you have no rights to anything.
That's right.
Something I want to discuss about the tricks that are going on right now with forced resignations that the employee doesn't even realize they just resigned. So we'll talk about that as well.
So, okay. So go back. So how many days for a layoff and how many days for a termination? I just want people to really have this clear, because I think it's confusing for folks.
So if you are terminated by yourself, you get 21 days to review the severance agreement and 7 days to revoke it if you're over 40 years old.
Okay.
If you're let go with even one other person, instead of 21 days, you have 45 days.
Got it.
Employers don't want to sit here and with this for 45 days hanging around.
No.
They will try to pressure and coerce you and give you only 21 when you're entitled to 45, or give you 7 when you're entitled to 21. I've seen it many times. If you're under 40 years old, unfortunately, there are no rules or laws in place for you. The employer can give you as many or as few days as they want. They can give you 1 or 3 or 7 or 10. The average is 7. And I do have an email that I share with people that I'm happy to give out. You can reach out, that has about an 80 to 90% success rate in getting an extension for that time period to review it. Now, the other thing I want to talk about is severance. It's literally presented as the opposite of reality to every employee. They present it that they're doing you a favor, that they care, that they like you, that they're helping you transition, that it's an extension of your pay. And they also remind you that they don't have to do it. Well, the only thing that they said that was truthful right there is that they don't have to do it. And the reason why they do it is because for their own selfish reasons. For you to sign a release of all claims and liabilities and promise to never sue, and no other reason. Once you sign that, you don't exist to the employer. They never have to hear from you again. So it's literally the opposite. So when you can let the employer know that you understand the game, you understand why they offer severance, and you take away the false leverage that they try to put on you, the false deadlines that they dangle, the little bit of money that they initially offer, knowing that you're unemployed, you don't know where your next paycheck is coming from, your head is spinning, you've been blindsided. Now you're under 40 and you've been given 3 days to sign. What do you do?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. These things go on.
So Dan, we got a question, and I think this is a great question. So this is from Dan Rothery. He says, I was recently terminated. Severance offer only included 1 month, but not any compensation for my parental leave, which was 12 weeks, and he had not taken it yet. Initially scheduled paternity was entered and approved in the system, but then postponed in coordination with the manager.
Yep. I've talked to 30 people with that exact same story. What I would have done, what I would do, I don't know if how long ago this has happened, but working with us, we would put together a scathing, reputationally damaging, shameful, therapeutic, reflective, comprehensive document that lays out this situation in a strong, scary way. Let them know that you violated your FMLA rights, that they've denied you your chance to bond with your newborn child, and instead you have to spend this time now going and looking for a job when they've terminated you and violated your rights. We let them know that we will be pursuing this fully. We will be escalating to the CEO. We'll be escalating to the board of directors and let them know the shameful way of which the leadership that they entrust their reputation with is behaving. And then perhaps go a legal route, or whether it's with an EEOC or a National Labor Relations Board, or to an attorney.
Dan, not you, Dan Rothery, you hear that? Reach out to Goodman. He will help you. Great advice. I hope that helped. Guys, please keep the questions coming. Okay, so Dan, back to the cycle we were on. So they have the severance package. They have the either no days if they're under 40 or some weird calculation, or if they're over 40, it's 21 or 45. So then what? Do they say, I'm going to engage an attorney? What do they say? Because my guess, you tell me if I'm right, my guess is that company is going to be putting the pressure on. They're going to be emailing you. They're going to be texting you. They're going to be saying, hey, have you signed yet? What's holding it up? What are you doing? How do you respond?
That all that does is tell me that they're really worried about you signing it, and they're playing their hand to you, and you have more leverage than you even thought you had in the first place. That's what happens there. What you need to do is you need to separate the words that they say versus the actions that they show you. And they're often two very different things.
Dan says he was terminated on February 18th. So pretty recent.
Yep. Is Dan over 40? Probably not if he's going on paternity leave.
I can't tell from his tiny little picture, and I'm not going to.
All right. Well, Dan, DM me.
Reach out to Goodman, Dan Rothery. He will help you.
As long as you haven't already signed your severance agreement, there's always a possibility.
Okay. Keep going. So they've shown their hand. They're saying that they're worried that you're not going to sign. And how do you respond? What's the thing that you say?
What we do is that we focus on 3 pillars: legality, empathy, and the court of public opinion. And, depending on what your specific situation is, we would weave together. We basically identify all the dots that they've shown you for months leading up to it. And when you were terminated, we connect them together and weave it together into a compelling narrative of wrongdoing to show the employer why it's in their best interest to resolve this, why it's in their best interest to make you an advocate, not an adversary. And if they're unwilling to do that, what comes next? And we show them beyond any doubt that we're not full of hot air. We're not playing a game of chicken to see who's going to blink first. This is the problem. The last thing I would do is tell them I'm going to get a lawyer, because you know what? They hear that from everybody.
Yeah.
So don't make blind threats unless you're going to follow through with them. What I would do is what we want to do is, you have a right to speak your truthful narrative. You have no obligation to hide the wrongdoing on behalf of your employer. As of February of 2023, the National Labor Relations Board passed a ruling that non-disparagement is no longer allowed in severance offers. Severance buys your right to sue and any claims you have. It does not buy your silence or have any obligation to hide things on behalf of the employer. Amazing. So what we want to do is show the employer why it's in their best interest to make you an advocate, not an adversary. We want to show them that you're not giving away trade secrets, strategies, confidential company information. You're sharing your truthful experience that you have no obligation to hide on their behalf.
Yeah.
So
I think the delay tactic is really helpful. I think, from hearing what you're saying, my advice to the audience is, if you are given a severance package, wait, just breathe, get some advice, get some help, get your bearings, don't sign anything, and take your time. You don't have to take months, but you take time and before you make a decision,
When
because
you mentioned the delay tactics, it really brought something up. And this is so I would argue that the employer has no leverage when it comes to severance, although they will literally present it as the opposite, and the employee doesn't think they have any leverage.
yeah.
The only true leverage the employer really has is when the employee has no safety fund. When they've got a mortgage that's due in 2 weeks, and if they don't sign the severance now, then they're going to void their payment or not make their payment. That's when they truly have the leverage. So it's always a good idea to have that safety net, no matter where you are at what stage in life, to plan for the worst. But I've learned this from experience. I've worked with folks that literally had an incredible case. I thought for sure it was going to be a 6-figure increase. They got an increase of the first offer by 18 grand. They got a quick rejection on the second one, and they had to cave and take it, and they couldn't wait it out. And it was shocking, frankly. And I've seen it play out over and over again.
All right, we got another question from Jim Marino. He said he was put on garden leave January 2nd per his 90-day notice period in his contract and will be effectively terminated on April 1st, and then only offered 1 month of severance, 1 additional month of COBRA reimbursement. His role was GM and SVP, reporting to the CEO. He's over 50, and 2 other people on his team were let go the same day, both over 50. They're only paying salary, no commissions for the 90-day garden leave. Of course, they feel that this is 4 months total, so very generous on their part.
So the garden leave could be applying to one of 2 things. It could be applying to basically a notice period, which would be something more like the Warren Act. So I don't believe it's that. But if Jim is in Massachusetts, I think that what he might be referring to is that if the company is trying to enforce a non-compete in Massachusetts, they have to pay 50% of the employee's salary for as long as they want to keep them from working for a competitor. That's what I've heard referred to as garden leave before. Jim, you and I can talk offline a little bit about that. I think why don't we go ahead and do that?
Yeah, that sounds good. It sounds a little complicated, and with the 4 months severance, I don't know if I fully understand.
I mean, they do like to dress that up. He's in Georgia. Yeah, they do like to dress up things like they're giving you a notice period that they're required by law in some instances to do, and then want to count that as if that's part of your severance, that you're getting that regardless of whether you sign the severance or not.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So, guys, what I'm going to just offer here is one thing that Intry has done in the past is we've done these career accelerators for job seekers, and they're very small. It's 20-person cohorts. They're 2-day intensives, and we spend a lot of time giving you everything you need. It's from the best in the business. So you get ATS ready resumes, your LinkedIn profiles optimized, interviewing tips and techniques, job search strategy, talks with recruiters, mental health, salary negotiation, and so much more. If you are interested in this, reach out to me and we will pull together another cohort. We've been pulling back from these because job seekers have categorically said they don't want to spend money on themselves. But the reality is, when you are a job seeker, you need help. You need to be around the experts, and this is an investment in yourself. I know from my own corporate experience, investing in myself was not something that I was accustomed to. I did not know that, of course, I could get education that was sponsored by the company, and I took advantage of that all the time. But I wasn't really interested in going out and spending my own money on stuff. But we're in a different world now, and you've got to upskill. You've got to invest in yourself. So take the time, figure out if it's something that you need, reach out to me. I'll tell you what it's about. And if you want to do that and we can get enough folks, then we will gladly do another career accelerator.
I've got a couple of folks in the last couple of weeks that I would have sent over to you if I realized, but I'll keep
No, send them over. And this is, I will tell you, the people that have taken our career accelerators come out of it with a very different perspective. Their shoulders are back. They have a personal brand. They know how to tell their story. They know what their UVP is, their unique value prop, and they know how to navigate. They have a plan. They know how to network. And our success rate with these is very, very high, like in the 90s.
There are so many people that are just fed up with the corporate world, and they feel like they're in the gerbil wheel. It's just rinse and repeat. That they're looking for somewhere else to go, and they're trying to figure out how to get there. And their services like Lindsay is sharing are very valuable to folks.
Yeah. Hi, Kimberly Arnold. Thank you for your sweet comment. Yeah, I wish I had Dan too. um, so I just really want to impress upon folks, and we have time for one more question. So guys, please, if you have one, throw it in. I want to impress on folks that you are not alone. There's enormous expertise out on LinkedIn and elsewhere, and people who actually want to help. You are not alone. You should not feel ashamed. I think that is a natural feeling when you lose a job. There is a lot of controversy around the open to work banner on LinkedIn and the stigma that comes with that. There are two camps. Some people say, oh, we shouldn't have that stigma anymore. Go ahead, put it up there. But because there's still half the population that looks at that and says you're desperate, I advise my clients don't do it. But it's a personal choice. You've got to decide if that's what you want to do. And I would just say, surround yourself with people who are doing this well and who are really thinking about the good stuff and putting out good content, because there's tons of it out there. All right. We just got a question from Wendy Norris. She said, is there a sweet spot in terms of timing to negotiate a severance? For example, days before signature deadline?
The real way that you have the most success in negotiating a severance is when you let the employer know that that deadline is meaningless to you. That if you're offered 5 or 10K and you've been there for 5 or 6 years, are you going to give up all of your rights and hand that over for $5,000?
No.
So what we do is that we submit this big document back. If you've got 30, 40K offer and you're worried about it, we'll ask them to suspend the deadline for good faith negotiations. So that's not involved in part of the play here. But ultimately that's when you have the power, is when you take away the false leverage that they think they have when they really don't. When you let that deadline go by, it sends a really strong, clear message to the company. I've worked with a half a dozen people that didn't know about me, heard about me after they signed, but before the 7-day revocation period. So they actually revoked the severance offer that was signed. And guess what? We're 7 for 7 and having significantly larger increases, because that sends a really strong, scary message to the company that this person just signed away all of their rights. And now something has happened between now and then where they feel assured, where they're giving up what they signed and now they want to move forward.
Yeah, I think they're counting on you to not negotiate. And I think that's a big mistake. You always want to negotiate. And I think my friend Carrie Lynn Shaw just did a video this week about 90% of the people who negotiate actually win. And it might not be you're walking away with a 6-figure severance package, but it might mean an increase.
So just to add to that point. So I believe I've done many polls about this and gotten 1,500 respondents. Roughly a third of the people out there don't even know that you're allowed to even negotiate severance.
Right.
And if they do know, they don't know how to go about it, or they don't want to bother, or they're too traumatized to try, or they don't want to look back and they're forward thinking and they want to spend their energy getting for a new job, or they already have the job and don't want to bother. So as a result, do you think that employers are going to initially offer what they're willing to pay? I would argue a majority of them offer literally half of what they're more than willing to pay if you can put together a compelling argument about why they should offer more. And the problem is when people try to do this on their own, the mistake that they continuously make is that they look at it only from their perspective. They say the stuff that the employer already knows. And they're like, well, it's a tough job market. Well, I worked there for 4 years. You need to motivate the employer to show them why it's in their best interest to have you sign that separation, not complain to them about what they already know. And then you add on the empathy piece. You add on the value and the loyalty. But first, you need to motivate them to want to do it in the first place.
Yeah, Deborah Ann just said she had an interview the other day and they seemed disappointed that she had been laid off in August of 2024. So Deborah, the thing that I'm gonna say to you is how you tell your story is very important. And this is a lot of what we work on in our Career Accelerator, your UVP, and how you talk about your gap year, or how you talk about the time you took to raise your family, or how you handled being laid off. You have to come from a point of strength, and it's really, really incumbent upon you to not be like, and I was laid off, because that doesn't sound really attractive. You have to say, For circumstances outside of my control, I was laid off. The company was making decisions and had to downsize. But you know what? It was a gift because I was able to do X, Y, Z. And that got me the opportunity to sit here with you and explore this next opportunity. This happens to everyone. It's on you to tell your story and weave it in a way that always puts you in a position of power. Don't do what I did and sit for a month in a puddle and too afraid to talk about it, too afraid to say anything because the shame is so real. This is not, you're not alone. You're not alone. And listen, 2 books later, 140 episodes on a podcast, lots and lots of awards, TV, radio. I'm doing okay. I got fired, but I'm doing okay. So there's hope. There is a lot of hope out there, and there's a lot of people that can help.
So there's got a couple of questions here too, but I just add to Deborah Ann's. I think, frankly, that's a reflection of the person who is doing the interviewing. In this job market, to make a comment like that is completely inappropriate.
Agreed.
And, you know, there's layoffs happening all the time that Lindsay started off the conversation with. A couple quick things. So if you're under 40, there is no revocation period unless the state that you live in has one, and that with contracts. So I've seen that a few times, but in general, no. And then someone else had asked, should we be worried about revoking the agreement? It's a fantastic question. I have never seen or heard a scenario where the employer reduced or removed the severance. I have never seen a scenario, even when the employee allowed the deadline to go by, that fake deadline, where you couldn't get back the most recent offer on the table. Again, they have no legal obligation to offer the severance. By attempting to negotiate it does not change their desire to have you sign it. Because this false deadline has gone by does not change the value of your signature to the employer. It's all a mental mind game that they play. And you need to realize the game and that it's going on and what rights you have and control the narrative.
Yeah, guys, I'm loving these questions. It shows that you are really engaged, and this is obviously a very, very hot topic. We do these series every week on Tuesdays or Thursdays at 1 p.m. Eastern. There will be more guests. There will be more people coming. But if you have other topics you want us to highlight, please send them my way. If we're not connected on LinkedIn, let's make sure that we are. Dan, how can people find you?
I'm out here on LinkedIn every day. I post twice a day, 7 days a week from my personal page. I post once a day, 5 days a week from my company LinkedIn page. My website is dangoodmanea.com. You can email me, find me on LinkedIn. I live on LinkedIn in my DM box every day. I bring it to zero every day, and not so much with my emails, unfortunately. I've been on about 30 podcasts. We'll continue to do so. I'm out here. I am doing this 7 days a week. It is a joy every day to do this. I am blessed to be able to help people in this situation. And, we all need to collectively work together to change this very broken system.
I feel the same. And like you, I am here to help. And Intry has a bevy of resources for career coaches and resume writers, for companies that are about to go through layoffs, and for job placement agencies like Goodwill. So if you are any of those profiles, please come and talk to me. I would love to talk to you. I would love to help you change the way that you're doing things. But all in all, we just want our job seeking friends to feel like you have support, you have what you need to move forward. And if you need anything, we are 2 people that are here to help. So, Dan, I think you gave me a number before we started the show, and you said, how many people have reached out to you recently?
So I put out a type form 2 Octobers ago, and I've just had more than 6,000 people since 2 Octobers ago fill that out. I have just crossed the $7.2 million mark, and the amount of dollars that we have helped employees increase, not their total, but increase their severance offers that they would not have gotten if they didn't come to us and have us help them. This is money that they would have just signed their severance that was offered and walked away. And we have brought into the pocketbooks and wallets of employees $7.2 million since June of 2 years ago. Something I am extremely proud of.
Yeah, I need an applause button for that. That's really, really amazing. And guys, don't leave money on the table. Don't make the mistake of thinking you don't have options. You do, but talk to the experts. The worst thing that you could do is just believe that they are there, that you only have one option, and that is to sign. You have choices, you have options, and you have choices as leaders, you have choices as executives. Don't forget it. And you should be leading with heart. So that's where I'm going to leave it today. Dan, it's always a pleasure, my friend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for having me
so much. And thanks for all the great questions, everybody. We'll see you next week with another guest. So take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.